Oh, and we are live. And it's just Brad. What's up, just
Just
Brad?
Brad, how you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Deep dives and geek talk. I like it.
Deep dive and geek talk. I feel like it's April 2019 all over again.
Well, I think we're gonna have a heavy dose of both tonight with Steven.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the last, what was it, 2 weeks ago, we had Stephen Kent on the show. We're talking about how the Force can save the world. I've been listening to his Beltway Banthas.
Yeah.
I think he's got three of them out now. Really interesting stuff. I was telling you a little bit about how, I really love hearing other people's interpretation of certain things like the Force and fate and all the cool stuff that isn't really, your usual run of the mill Star Wars stuff like lightsabers, spaceships, and Siths and Jedi. I really love just hearing other people's interpretations of all that deep stuff that we like to talk about here at the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, like we mentioned a long time ago, it was that deep content that was allowed us to keep talking about Star Wars, even during, as we say, the dark times of the late '80s and pretty much the entire '90s.
Right.
But yeah, like we said last time when Steven was on, I've been listening to Beltway Banthas for a couple of years now, and I always love that discussion that they have on there, seeing both sides to different topics, and yeah, and so I'm glad he agreed to come back on. Started like I told Stephen on Twitter. When I buy a book, I typically buy Audible, Kindle, and the hard copy. I have to have the hard copy on the shelf, and then I just want to devour the book, so I'll listen to it on Audible, and I got the Kindle version as well. And about halfway through the book right now, it's a it's a really good read. So I love. We're going to get into those topics tonight, and pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I get my copy. I got an email from Amazon that it's coming tomorrow. So looking forward to it. It's kind of what would you call it? It was Destiny. It's Disney Plus Day tomorrow. Talking to Steven tonight.
Yep.
Yeah, I wanted to before we bring him on, before we really start the nitty gritty here, I want to remind everybody that during our regular course of Scarif Scuttlebutt stuff, don't forget, we love hearing what you guys have to say about anything, deep cuts, quick cuts, comments on past shows. Give us a call. And leave us a voicemail so we can use it and play it on an upcoming show. That number is 773-234-8659. Like I said, we love hearing what you got. Whatever the topic is, we got some really good discussions going based on some of our voicemails. So we love hearing all that stuff. So yeah, give us a call, leave us a voicemail. We also want to announce that we've got a new patron. And we definitely appreciate all the support that we get from folks that support us with patronage on Patreon. We have Steve Long, and you guys can catch him. He's another member of our Red 5 family. You can catch him as Rogue One Radio. Please hit him up. Him and DJ, hit them up on Rogue One Radio. Give him a follow, give him a listen, and a sub. So big thanks to Steve. Thank you so much. You got some Scarif swag coming your way. Hopefully, it should be there relatively soon.
Steve's such a great guy.
Yeah.
He's fun to interact with. On his podcast and on Twitter. He's a very good influence there, positive influence. Also, thank you to everybody that's shown up in the chat already. Dave, it's great to see you as well.
Yes.
Thank you for being here as always. Lunar Girl, thank you. 97 Bravo, brother, it's always good to see you. And happy Veterans Day to you and to all of the other veterans out there that supported our country.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. So tomorrow, You excited about tomorrow? We got some stuff that's going to be releasing throughout the day. I think I read somewhere that it's going to start at like 8 o'clock in the morning or 7 in the morning. So yeah, I'm worked up. What do you?
Yeah,
Anything you looking forward to?
yeah. I don't have to be at work till till the nighttime tomorrow, so I'll be able to geek it out during the day. Don't we have the trailer coming for Obi-Wan
I
tomorrow?
think a trailer or a teaser or
Yeah.
something. But Deborah Chow has some stuff to show us tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to it. Let me ask you this: what aspect of the Obi-Wan series are you looking forward to? It's going to be a limited series, 6 episodes. I think it was cut down from 8 down to 6. But I'm hoping that they have tweaked the script and got everything ready to go. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take quality over quantity if that's where we're at. As long as we got a good story, I'm still very intrigued to see how they're going to integrate Hayden Christensen into that story, whether it be by flashbacks or what's going to happen, or if he's going to be in the suit. Um, I think we might get a glimpse tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's there's no better day than when you can nerd out, even if it's just a teaser. Those are the best days.
Absolutely. So, since you're not working till later in the day, keep your phone at the
Are we
ready
chatting?
because
Are we chatting tomorrow?
we can do some chats, we
Yeah.
can do some reviews whenever that stuff pops up. We'll start the StreamYard and keep going. See if anybody wants to join us and react to some of that stuff. But speaking of joining us, we got to hit that countdown and bring our guest of honor tonight and start talking about how the Force can save the world. We'll be back in 32 seconds, I think. I don't know how long it is. We'll talk to you later. I'm going to have a drink.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Stephen Kent, how's it going? I see you dancing back there. I can see you. Yeah,
Hey, how are
absolutely.
y'all?
How's it going?
Very good, very good. Happy to be back.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come back to the beaches of Scarif. Hopefully, we don't see any large, round shadows overhead.
It's where my boy Orson took his last breaths.
Yeah, yeah,
His
yeah.
project got
Pour one
completed
out for
though,
him.
so there you go.
But Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. We had a couple of things that obviously we didn't get to the last time, and we had such a great time talking to you about all that stuff. We're going to talk to you a little bit more about that. We also had some folks in the chat that really that direct messaged me and said, "Wow, that show was great. I'm going to get his book. I'm going to pre-order it. It'd be great to have him on again." And hey, we
Well, thank you for the
made it
reschedule. I
happen.
apologize it didn't work out a couple days ago, but
No, don't. No
it's
problem.
always
No
always a
problem.
delight when
That's
people
what we do
want to
here.
go deeper.
We get
Absolutely.
concerned if we do execute things on time here on the Scared Scuttlebutt.
So Brad wanted to go a little bit off script, if you will. Brad, let's get the show going. I know there's some people in the chat, and some folks from the UK that is a little on the later side over there. So let's get this party started, huh?
Yeah. So we're going to get to some of that deep stuff. Like I was telling Ro at the top of the show, I'm 3 chapters into your book. Got it on Audible, and I appreciate so much that you read for the narration on there. It means to me a lot more when the author reads their work. So I can just imagine you saying all that stuff, and it's really off to a great start. And I can't wait to talk about those topics. But first, Ro and I have talked many times. This is just we're back in middle school around the lunch table, and we're just discussing Star Wars here. So I'm going to put you on the hook for some things, and we're just going to talk some Star Wars right off the bat. And you mentioned the Rise of Skywalker and your love for that movie, or was it the Last Jedi? Maybe it was the Last Jedi.
I don't think
No, wait.
either of those things are correct.
What? Oh,
What book did you read, Brad?
so so defend your answer. What's the best Star Wars movie out there, and why is it? We had an entire debate between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. We all know that Return of the Jedi came out the victor.
Yeah,
In
it's
that
Return of the
conversation.
Jedi. Episode 6 remains my favorite Star Wars
There you
film,
go.
and
See, there you
and
go,
I
Ro.
think it is the best Star Wars film. I think it's the most well-rounded, and I get that there's a certain grittiness to Episode 5 and a really perfect flow for that movie, but at its core, Star Wars is a story of dark becoming light again, and I weep when I watch the end of Return of the Jedi every time, and particularly it's the scene when Luke is being tormented by the Emperor's Force lightning, and you see Vader watching, and I just get lost every time I watch that scene, because isn't it incredible how Darth Vader looks sad during that moment? He has a mask on and it never changes, but just the way that he's looking down at Luke in that moment with the lightning flashing against his mask, it looks like he is miserable. And I find that to be just poetry. So I always come back to Return of the Jedi as my favorite and the
There you
best.
There you go. See, Ro, I win. We have a
You win
published
again.
author on the show who has agreed with me. Therefore, you can't argue with that. Now,
Absolutely.
You are
you know,
canceled.
right. One thing that, speaking of canceled, one of the things that really aggravated me with the Last Jedi is when Luke tossed the lightsaber. This is how the movie started. Luke tosses his lightsaber over his shoulder, and people drew the parallel between that and when he threw his lightsaber to the side in that scene in the throne room in Return of the Jedi. Do you think that's a fair, accurate parallel between those? Or are they way off
No, because one is an act of strength and another is an act of cowardice. Luke is very two different people at two different points in his life. And the choice to reject violence and to reject spilling blood of killing your own father like the Emperor wanted him to do, and throwing the weapon down on the ground and basically saying, no, I choose death before I choose that. That's obviously incredible courage. And we know, and this is not slamming The Last Jedi. I will make straw or steel man arguments for it all day. But what he was doing on Octo was hiding. And he was afraid of his destiny. He was afraid of failure. And he wanted to reject, again, like he did originally in Episode 4, the call to adventure. It's the cycle of the hero's journey. So no, those are two very different contexts. And I think people who connect that are in some cases, they are trying to cover up their love for The Last Jedi and make an argument that connects the two. In some cases, I think they're misreading that. Those are two very different acts.
I want to, we'll jump back and forth with content from your book a little bit here. One of the things you discuss in the book is about the mask, and one of the most poignant scenes in Return of the Jedi is when the mask finally comes off Darth Vader. And you see he's just a
It's not James Earl Jones.
It's not James Earl Jones, and
It's Uncle Fester.
Yeah, right. You specifically talked about Kylo Ren and his mask. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the figurative taking off of the mask, and how that relates to the real life experience.
Well, I think I could kind of like monologue about this for 5 minutes, so I don't want to monopolize time. But I think it's intuitive to all of us, the idea that you basically have Darth Vader, this villain, you have Kylo Ren, who have put masks on themselves, one because he has to, another by choice, but they are essentially hiding their true selves and adopting new identities. That's what happens in the entire Sith religion is the death of the old self and the rebirth of a new one. And it's not, that Anakin's face is burned, that he says that name no longer has any meaning for me to Luke when he calls him Anakin Skywalker, the man who was once my father. It's because like the religion of the Sith says that person is dead, and they are being quite literal. It's exactly what Kylo Ren, not a proper Sith, but he says the same thing to Han Solo, that Ben Solo is dead. He destroyed him. He was weak. We all, and this is jumping into the analogy part of it, masks are a part of our daily lives. If you work a customer service job, you put on a mask if you are good at your job, and you go in and you smile and you say, yes, I'd be happy to help you, sir. Hey, my hotel room stinks, I need a new one. And you smile through your teeth like, okay, yes, I'd be happy to help. Masks are part of how we get through everyday life, whether it be with loved ones or it be in our jobs. And in the most dramatic circumstances, I talk about this a bit in my book. It's how some people survive. I talk a little bit about the lives of gang members and how, young teenagers who get wrapped up in gangs in the nation's most poor and dangerous neighborhoods, taking on the gang persona is not something they're doing for fun. Some of them maybe, but most of them, as you see with Han Solo and kids who are living far beneath the poverty line in Solo, like they're just trying to not get killed themselves. And that's really important. So I'm curious kind of like what you think of that and how far we can take that as an analogy. But I think it's one of Star Wars' most enduring messages.
Yeah, and I actually have a follow-up question for Ro on this one. How often do you see a mask being put on when the camera starts rolling? Like, do you see one thing and then the camera start rolling and then you see something else?
In my daily life as a news photographer, I would say probably yes, more times than the other. But I think it's more when I interview politicians, and that's very telling. Obviously, if we're walking down the street and we just want to get like a man on the street type of interview, you don't see that a lot. One, the mask gets put on maybe because they don't even want to talk to us. But it is interesting. I last time we had you on, Stephen, I was really intrigued about the duality of self. And one of your Beltway Banthas was talking about the choices that we make, whether it's wearing this mask or wearing another mask. And Brad, your question is an interesting one because me as a news photographer, I do come up with that. I do see people kind of like switching. When you see that red light, something happens. Even with us.
And Ro, I'm on the talent side. Like I do news like you and kind of media, and I'm on the other end of the camera, and it's real. I always say to people who I do trainings for media as well. So part of my day job is media training for people. And I always tell them like, hey, you got to have your camera smile for when the camera comes on. And they say, nice to have you here on the show. And you go, thank you. Nice to be here. It's right. You got to be able to turn it on a dime and then turn it off. And, it's phony to a certain extent, but it's also just survival. You can't not do it. And that's part of the Darth Vader story. It's like, if he doesn't do this, he might as well just die. If he doesn't commit to this new life he's in, he might as well just be dead. And he chooses instead hatred, the pain, the mask. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but just wanted to expand on that.
No, yeah, absolutely. So does that answer your question, Brad? One of the things that I really enjoyed listening to your Beltway Bantha about the duality and choice is how we as real people manage that balance. And I know in the fictional world in Star Wars, you've got the light and the dark. I think the last couple of years we've kind of seen that in the real world, where it's like there is no like middle ground anymore. It's either I'm way over here or I'm like way over on that side. So I'm just curious as to hear some of your thoughts based on the research that you've done for your book as far as the Force saving the world. how do real people kind of manage that
Yeah.
balance? Do they know that they have two choices, left or
Yeah.
right, dark or
Yeah.
light?
So I think a lot of people do instinctively know that there are different sides of themselves that they choose to publicly share with people, and then sides of themselves that they do not. And this can either be completely safe and benign and harmless stuff. Okay. So I'm always bad with like coming up with examples off the top of my head, but it might just be that like you share with, your wife one part about yourself, that like you love the outdoors and all this stuff, and she hates video games, right? So you just sort of like tuck away the old part of yourself from your 20s that loved playing Halo until 3 a.m. And you do that for whatever reason. But we also know exactly what the dark side of this is when you hide certain things away about yourself, whether it be your sexual appetites, the way that your identity actually leans. In the most Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde sense, there are some people who have like really dormant darkness in them that they really struggle with. And it can be something that they need medication for, right? Like depression medication or bipolar and anxiety disorder. There are all sorts of parts of us that we struggle with. The spiritual side of this is basically coming down to whether or not you feed your shadow or not. And some of the research that I had done into this kind of goes back to the psychologist Carl Jung. And he talked about the idea of the shadow self and the idea that there was some merit to feeding the shadow so that the shadow does not get starved and then eat you. This is basically saying that if you have a lamb and a wolf inside of you, and you do not feed that wolf ever, you don't ever feed that little bit of darkness inside yourself, and sometimes when I say darkness, and I'm like referring to like maybe your sexuality or something like that, I'm not saying like a certain sexual preference or whatever is dark, but like if you just purely starve a thing in you that is deep down and hidden from others, it's going to burst out of you in an ugly way at some point, in a destructive way, in a chaotic way. People who have balance in their lives find ways to both feed the lamb and feed the wolf so that one does not eat the other. You have to do both. And at some point, you have to reckon which one is actually your true self. We could go a lot deeper on this, but I'll go ahead and stop there because I think the general problem in the Jedi and Sith philosophy is that the Jedi do not feed the shadow at all.
Right.
And the shadow eventually will either overcome you or you live your life pure of it. But it's all about suppression.
So
Is that where the balance comes in?
Yeah, I mean, it is where the balance comes in. The Jedi are not capable of bringing balance to the Force. They're light side cultists, and the Sith are dark side cultists. Like, they are religious ideologues who only believe in one certain side of the Force and practicing it. And you cannot have balance in that equation. The idea that the Jedi thought a person was going to come and bring balance to the Force, and bringing balance to the Force meant that they were not going to set the Jedi Order back a foot, is actually kind of insane. Like, it really is mind-boggling that Obi-Wan Kenobi would say, you were the chosen one. You were supposed to bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness. You were supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them. Like, who said that bringing balance to the Force meant that the dark side acolytes of the Force would be destroyed? How's that balance?
So, so based off what we're discussing here and hearing your thoughts, I'm just gonna kind of assume that you disagree with Yoda's thoughts in Empire Strikes Back, where he says, once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. So based off what you're saying, it sounds like you disagree with that sentiment.
So not necessarily. And I think Yoda has two different stories to tell about this. So how would I break this down? I never disagree with Yoda. Yoda's always correct. It is true that once you start down the dark path, the path of fear to anger to hate to suffering, that it will always then be interconnected with your destiny. But we also know that Yoda, 20 years prior, he went on the journey in the Clone Wars at the final arc of the original strand of seasons of the Clone Wars, where he discovered the art of living after death. Qui-Gon reached out to him as a voice in the Force, and Yoda thought it was a demon. Like, he thought he was sick. Like, the Jedi Order, when Yoda started hearing Qui-Gon's voice, they had him medically tested to make sure he hadn't gone insane, which is really remarkable to remember. And so then he goes on this journey to discover this power to live on after death. Are y'all familiar with this arc?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. And so Yoda meets the Guardians of the Wills, these people who have the power to do this. What does he do? He faces his darkness. He basically faces dark side Yoda in a battle. And it always reminds me of Dark Side Link in the Ocarina of Time, the Zelda games. But the general idea was this. Yoda had to learn to see his dark self as an equal and opposite being, okay? So the dark side Yoda in the cave that he faces was not a monster. It was not a demon. It was not an alien. It was equally him. And what he had to do was recognize that this thing in front of him was him. Do you understand what I'm saying about kind of like the dark side and the light side of yourself, suppressing it versus saying, you know what, I have these urges, and it's not because something's wrong with me. It's because this is me. And that is part of the Jedi experience that holds people back from the ability to live life after death through the Force. You have to own your shadow and embrace the death of your hubris. So I think there's a little bit of a distinction made there between recognizing that you have darkness and then choosing to walk down the path.
Yeah, and in that particular arc, I remember Yoda telling his shadow self that, that he recognizes it. He realizes that it's him, and that it's almost like Yoda left him alone and said, you can hang around, but I'm not going to allow you to control me. And I think that's where, like, you're right. I think that's where the balance is coming from.
Yeah, it's kind of goes back to this story that is told, and I don't have the story in front of me, but it's like a Native American sort of folk tale, and it's again about the darkness inside yourselves and whether or not you feed the wolf. It's recognizing that these things are inside of you, and you're either going to feed it or you're going to drive it into a murderous frenzy through starvation, and that's just something that you can't really afford to do. And so whether it be some of your impulses that you would rather not guide your life, like, you're going to have to find a way to healthily relate to those things that you are driven to do. And if those things are criminal, you need to seek higher help. But I'm trying not to be like over dramatic here about that kind of stuff. But I think a lot of times when I talk about this, I always end up going to the subject of sexuality, like whether or not it's your kinks or the things that you're into, right? Like, you've got to be able to be in control of those desires, or they are going to control you. And that takes a familiarity with it. That takes a familiarity with the thing that makes you tick. Otherwise, it's alien and fascinating and exotic to you, like when it's a black marketed item and it's just something that you just constantly crave. And I'm curious what people in the comments section are thinking about this analogy, but the Jedi just did not know how to relate to romantic love, and it was not good for them. They needed to know how to deal with this emotion properly so that you don't have someone like Anakin Skywalker come along who doesn't know how to love properly, and he only relates to it in a selfish manner. He did not love Padme as much as he loved being in control of a certain thing in person, and that is my Anakin and Padme hot take. But
and like Luke says in the comments here, and you discuss this in your book as well, about facing your dark side. When Luke goes in the cave on Dagobah, thinks he's fighting the greatest villain in the universe, only to find out that he's fighting another form of himself.
Correct.
So I think that goes along with a lot with what you're saying here.
Yeah, we see it. We see it throughout Star Wars lore in Force cave situations, dark side caves, and whenever Jedi go through that ritual in the Jedi Temple, where they face their fears. And I'm trying to think of like a specific example from the Clone Wars, but like for some people, their fears manifest themselves as these giant spiders. And is it really that they're afraid of spiders or snakes? Or is it that they are afraid of this unfamiliar thing that they've never touched, related to, or dealt with before? Right? I am deathly afraid of snakes. If I were put into a dark side cave, there would be cobras surrounding me because I lose my shit. But I have also wrangled and tamed snakes in the wilderness with my family, captured them, grabbed them with two hands, put a thumb on top of their head to stop them from biting me. And I know what they can do. And I know what I can do to them in return. I understand the power dynamic, but boy, do they still scare me. But I can command them. And that's the thing that people have to learn when they're in these dark side caves. There's this series on Disney Plus right now. It's a Halloween series called like Just Beyond. It was like a kind of an R.L. Stine inspired horror series. And this girl, her parents have just gone through a divorce and she's internalized all of the pain that she's going through. And she's pretending like she's fine. Her mom is saying, "Oh, honey, you've been so brave through this whole thing. Thank you for being my rock and my support." And the kid is like, "Oh, I'm here for you, mom." And then when the mom goes away, she's just heaving tears, right? Like she's hurting inside. And then she starts to be visited by this like ghoulish masked demon in her bedroom at night. And it's scaring the crap out of her. She thinks her house is haunted. And she eventually comes to realize that this apparition that is showing up to her is her anxiety about what she's been going through with her family and the divorce. And the scariest moment is when that thing gets right up in her face. It looks like the Slender Man from those really creepy spaghetti or whatever cartoons. I can't remember what they're called. Creepypasta, right? And when she looks at the masked creature and she touches the mask and she goes, "You're just like me, aren't you?" Then it steps back from her. And then she says, "Turn around." And it turns around. She says, "Bend over." And it bends over. And it's only after she realizes that this thing is her, not a creature, then she can control it.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. And I was like, this is Star Wars messaging. This is great.
It's interesting what you bring up, I just had one thing to add before Brad has another question for you. But there is a certain thing about fear. You brought this up in your fear of snakes, but also your understanding, which kind of quells that fear a little bit. My wife, my son are deathly afraid of any insects that crawl or fly, bees, spiders, whatever, beetles. I find them fascinating because as a kid, I loved to read about them. I loved watching documentaries on how they live, how they eat, how they crawl, all that stuff. So the understanding of something different, I think, goes a very long way into understanding the unknown. And obviously that kind of eliminates fear. And I think when we talk about understanding in the context of the Force saving the world, wouldn't you say that understanding your brother, understanding your sister, understanding that person on the other side of the aisle goes a long way from fearing that person versus empathizing or understanding that person's point of view?
Absolutely. I mean, when you know different people of different political persuasions and you're able to not cartoonize them as something lesser than human or, relatable, it becomes harder and harder to demonize those people. Like I spent my entire 20s playing in punk rock bands through college and then touring up and down the East Coast. And I will tell you something that you probably already know about like punk rock land is that there are a lot of Antifa kids in the punk rock scene who play music by day or play music by night, are baristas by day, and on the weekend they're Antifa. And you know, when you actually know these people and you can put faces to the ideas and you've talked to them and you've seen these different aspects of who they are, you're not just getting your information about them through Fox News or through MSNBC or CNN. When you know a conservative, when you know a gun owner, and you know how gun owners are like incredibly, in many cases, like very rigorous about laws and regulations and safety with guns. Like when you meet gun people do not play with guns. They know exactly what they're doing, and it's remarkable to me every time I spend time with one. You know, whenever you meet someone who's reckless, they're not really a Second Amendment or gun person. But you got to know these people, and you have to broaden the amount of people who you have in your life for you to understand that and start thinking a little bit broader and having a little bit of a larger view of the force.
It gives your menu a bigger choice, as you say in one of your episodes, right?
Yeah, and I mean that's a little bit tied to like the subject of free will and whether or not we truly have choices in our lives. Our choices in life, I believe in free will very much. I'm not a determinist who believes that, you know, all of our choices are predetermined and that our conditions and our upbringing push us towards being certain kinds of people. I'm a free will fundamentalist, but it is true that our menu of choices in life are sometimes set for us. And we have choices that we can make about whether or not that menu gets smaller or larger over time. But a healthy and rounded person is going to do things in life to expand their options, put themselves in the right place at the right time, network, get to know new people. Don't do criminal things that are going to limit your choices in life. Like, you know, these are all things that I tie back to the story of Ray and, you know, kind of how being in the right place at the right time, putting yourself out there can change the course of your life. But it's a kind of long analogy in the book.
So we're talking about the dark side a lot here, and one of our longest episodes that we've had here on Scarif, we were discussing philosophically the light side and the dark side, and one of the biggest matters of contention on that show was the question that I posed: is the dark side in itself inherently evil? And I think you and I might be on the same page on this, and where I said I do not believe the dark side in and of itself is an evil thing. So I want to get your thoughts on that, but also if your mind's where I think it is on this, then explain how it's just the Sith that are using the dark side, and we can all agree that the Sith are most definitely evil.
Yeah, I mean, the Sith are an evil religious sect committed to the dark side of the Force, and it's because they're absolutists. I do not believe the dark side to be evil in nature. The dark side is emotion, it is indulgence, it is satisfaction, it is feeling and pursuing personal growth and power, and things that, you know, are not wrong. None of those things on their own are wrong. And it's not wrong to feel. It is not wrong to love. It's not wrong to want power, which power is agency. When you have power, you have choices over things and you can shape your destiny. That's why Sith are always talking about, you know, like pursuing and clinching your destiny, right? Because it's about growing in your power and then saying, you know, I lay claim to my future. But Jedi choose a different path, which is that they are not going to force their lives to go a certain way. They're not going to try to control things. They're going to let go. Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. And a Sith would go, haha, that's ridiculous. You can have everything that you want and feel great about it. Why on earth would you deprive yourself of that? So it's the Sith and the Jedi thing that throws the entire factor off completely. But no, the dark side is fine. But I will caution you in saying that it is absolutely true that the dark side, I think, exposes you to a quicker route to being consumed by evil. Hedonism, self-satisfaction, feeling good all the time, I think these are not good things. Discipline brings you happiness in life. Having more choices brings you happiness in life. And the dark side encourages feeling good. And in your pursuit of feeling good, you're going to eventually get yourself in trouble. And when you get in trouble, your choices in life are limited. And you see this over and over again with dark side characters is they go too far. And then what happens? They have nowhere else to go. So it's a trap. But disciplined people and maybe a more balanced gray Jedi religion could actually teach you how to do it right.
Oh, he threw out the gray Jedi term, Brad. It's controversial. Controversial.
So,
I mean, how do you feel about that, though? Do you feel like the dark side is exclusively, neutral or prone to evil?
I'm on the same page with you personally because it's balance, right? It's literally the yin yang relationship that we see, and talking about that balance. And I think you've nailed it. Throughout the course of the show and throughout your book, it's recognizing it that it's part of you, but not unnecessarily feeding it. But as you said, repressing it is just going to make it worse. As we saw with Anakin Skywalker, he wanted to love, but that's forbidden, and so he repressed his feelings, and then he just he snapped.
You want to know an area where the light side can contribute to evil?
That was actually one of the thoughts I was having. So I'd love for you to go there.
Aloofness and just a general detachment from the plight of others if it would cause you to have to exert more control than you want to control. So if you think about like Qui-Gon Jinn on Tatooine, why on earth were the Jedi as a religion not fully invested in wiping slavery from the galaxy? They were not for two reasons. Probably one, political. So they did not, have a mandate from the Republic to eliminate slavery on Tatooine and to free slaves. But also they just didn't feel, in that the kind of violence that it would require to do that on Tatooine, the kind of coercion that trying to control this was necessarily like their job as defenders of the light side of the Force. There is a kind of stoic attitude about injustice and wrong. And I think libertarians can sometimes fall into this themselves, just sort of like, letting the chips fall where they may. We can't be involved in everything, maybe on a foreign policy level or humanitarian level. And maybe they're right. But it requires you to turn either a blind eye to evil or to accept its existence for some kind of greater good. And that is something that Anakin never recovered from. Anakin never recovered from the fact that the Jedi were not interested in ending slavery on Tatooine, where he lived his childhood and his mother died. That kind of aloofness contributes to evil, but much more on a societal level than I think the Sith, where it's like really on a personal level that you just descend into narcissism and evil.
And I'd love to. You actually took some of my next question already, but you mentioned Qui-Gon in episode 1, and I didn't come here to free slaves, but a more poignant example of that to me was in The Last Jedi. Now, a lot of this got cut out of the movie, but it's still in the book, where one of Luke's main messages, this is Last Jedi Luke, to Rey was to not get involved. And it just, to me, came off very strange. And I think that kind of tracks with what you're saying. But I was actually going to get into, we can't have you on here without talking about some libertarianism. But I want you to speak on this because I think it's kind of a misconception that people have about libertarians. Well, I agree with you on some points where libertarians, I feel, don't want the government to get involved. But a misconception about libertarians where we just don't think people should get involved at all
Yeah.
in other people's, misfortunes and and woes and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a misconception there with charity, do-gooding, community service, all that kind of stuff. Libertarians are the chief cheerleaders of private action, nonprofit sector development, civic organizations, churches, and clubs being like the people who feed the homeless or help people, get housed or help people who are struggling through getting through divorces and needing food in their homes, like all that kind of stuff. They are the biggest cheerleaders of that by and large, and they reject the idea that it's like the government's job to be doing those things. And liberals tend to be like, well, like it's, if we want to be a good society, the government is a reflection of what a good society would do. But, our point of view, I think this characterizes it correctly, is that when you give the government domain over benevolence and over like altruism, it writes people a check to they don't have to do anything. Your tax dollars are going towards welfare programs. Your tax dollars are going towards helping people. So you don't have to do much. And I think that has a corrosive long-term effect on who takes care of one another in a society. If you don't have to do anything and Big Brother's going to do it, then you'll go about your business. And I think that the proof exists from the 1960s to now, and the welfare state exploded and the government bureaucracy around the execution of welfare exploded, to the decline in civic organizations in this country that do community work. This information is easy to find. Both those have declined while the opposite government involvement have risen. So I think that's one thing, but I don't want to like overdo it on a Star Wars analogy there. I'm not sure if there is one that I would seize on besides my favorite libertarian in Star Wars is actually the guy played by Benicio del Toro in The Last Jedi. What's his name?
DJ.
Yeah.
Don't join.
Yeah,
Don't get roast started.
Don't join. It's all a game, brother. The Sith, the Empire, the Rebellion. That's one of my favorite characters just for that little contribution, because he's right. It is just a game, and you should live free and not enlist in this. But he's also a coward and a sniveling cheat. And so what are you to make of that? If he's correct that the balance of power between the light and the dark has basically been monetized by weapons organizations and weapons creators, how are you supposed to square that with the fact that he's also a bad person and probably morally bankrupt himself?
You mentioned in the book, and I love when you talk about the government, specifically the United States government, as we've called it for a while, the great experiment. And so I want to ask you a couple part question here. Are we seeing now that the great experiment, after all these years, is a failed experiment? And if not, how can the Force save the Republic?
Well, I think people have been sort of crying that like the American experiment was on its last legs since it began in 1776. And, we've gone through all sorts of different transformations and possibly much tougher times for the political environment than we have right now. Chiefly obviously being the Civil War, and then secondarily being the Civil Rights era, where domestic terrorism in the 1960s and early into the 1970s, combined with riots that burned cities down and movements that involved violent clashes, or not violent clashes, with violent oppression by government agents and police on activists, is the correct way to frame that. it's been worse. It really has been worse. But what we currently cannot get away from is the constant feedback loop of how much people in this country are different and hate each other and resent one another. So no, it's not over. It's not on its last leg. And I think we're going to see a revitalization of the American dream and the American idea. Star Wars and my book, Star Wars cannot fix the world. There's an article out in the Federalist today reviewing my book, and it was improperly titled, "Can Star Wars Fix the World?" And everyone in the comments section lost their bloody minds because they're all like, Star Wars can't fix the world. Have you seen Star Wars lately? And I was like, well, yeah, I agree with that. Star Wars has its own problems. It can't fix things. But the Force can. The ideas of Star Wars, the philosophy of it, the idea of balance and deference and non-coercion and loving one another despite all the reasons that you might have not to love other people, that can save the world, but only if you let it save you first. There's not going to be a movement in this country of people like calling themselves Jedi. Like, that's not what I'm proposing in my book at all. It is every reader, I hope that by the end of the book, they're like, damn, I love Star Wars, and I want to actually try to live a little bit more like Qui-Gon Jinn than I did yesterday. It's no different than if you are a practicing Christian, Muslim, or Jew. If you believe in this thing, if you believe in this story, why not try to live it a little bit? We love Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon. Maybe they're right about the way that we should be acting every single day. So that's what the book is doing. And I just hope, person by person, if we get our acts together, that, yeah, we will see a revitalization of commonality and shared purpose in our country.
I'm just going to go one further. I've got my Jedi robes ready to go. I'm going to wear those to work and walk around. So I'm not. I don't.
The world's
It's
been
Chicago.
fixed, all you didn't hear.
Chicago. They'll just accept it. I mean, the first two chapters. I mean, I love it because I wasn't sure where you were going with the 14-year-old queen. I'm like, I'm not sure if he's actually advocating for a monarchy based
Child
on
monarchy.
But in the end, it was the biggest key takeaway I had from that was humility, and I just love that the first two chapters right off the bat, two things that I fully appreciate and embrace: humility and empathy. And I think right there is how we're going to save this place.
I think that's key.
So I was on Glenn Beck's radio show earlier this week, and they were kind of ribbing me for the idea of the child monarchy thing. They're like, is chapter 1, are you arguing for child monarchy? I said, no, that's the illustrative point that Star Wars offers. But the point is much bigger than that. I mean, if you go back to Matthew 18 and the New Testament, why does Jesus say to his followers, you're going to need to be like children if you're actually going to follow me? He says this not because he thinks you should be naive or needy. He doesn't think that you should just act like, children. He's saying children know that they need a savior. Children know that they need help to make it through the day. They're dependent people. Adults are very pleased with their accomplishments. They're very pleased with their ability to take care of themselves. And maybe we should be some days, but by and large, it creates a little bit of sense of, I got this on my own, so I don't need God. And one of the guys on the show was like, are you trying to supplant religion with Star Wars? And I said, no. Star Wars is giving us the same message. I would prefer if more people read the good word, but I will settle for them watching Star Wars and then getting the same darn idea, which is that you need help and you're going to need help from other people. Therefore, don't be a jerk, and therefore be willing to humble yourself before other people and say, you know what, I'm not perfect, I need you. That's the only way we can make it as a society, is if we actually feel like we need our neighbors occasionally, and then we don't got this all on our own.
Misa doing liking this.
Their brain's so big.
Now, hearing Steven do Boss Nass in the book is classic.
They think they're so smarty. They think their brain is so big.
How many takes did that? How many takes did you have to have for that one for the book?
At least 3, because I kept laughing. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, I guess I'd never seen George Lucas's interview with Bill Moyers back in the day. He would have had some of those questions answered had he seen that interview. But we've been far too serious here now, so we got to get back to some geek talk. Boba Fett, best bounty hunter in the galaxy, or highly overrated?
Oh boy. I mean, I haven't ever seen him like, except for Han Solo successfully, which Darth Vader I feel like mostly did in episode 5. I haven't feel like I've ever seen the guy like win. So, I guess I was never a Boba Fett super fan. I was more interested in other characters, but I'm sure he's very talented. I will say I am much more married to Jango Fett as a bounty hunter because I played the old PlayStation video game. Do you guys remember the Bounty Hunter
PS2,
video
baby.
game with Jango Fett?
PS2, baby.
Yeah, PS2. I played that game, ad nauseum. I played it a lot. So as a Star Wars fan, I've been in control of Jango Fett and his guns and his jetpack, and I have actually wrangled criminals and low-life scum as Jango. So I honestly kind of feel more warm towards him as a prequel kid.
And you know what the moons of Bogda are if you play that game.
The moons of Bogda.
Yeah, Easter eggs, baby.
Oh yeah.
So tomorrow is Disney Plus Day. We're getting a whole bunch of stuff, but we're getting a documentary called The Legacy of Boba Fett. It's called Under the Helmet. If anybody is a Boba Fett stan, he obviously in Empire Strikes Back he had very little screen time, but he was a fan favorite all from the get-go. I think his look has a lot to do with it. Obviously, Star Wars being kind of almost kind of like a space western, he had the goods, and I think a lot of people kind of gravitated towards that.
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait to see that special. Yeah, I'm right there with you. That's going to be a good one.
Anything else that you are excited for tomorrow? That might
are we getting the Obi-Wan the sizzle right? Yeah, I mean, didn't it drop for a couple hours today and then vanished?
Yeah, but I think that was like a lot of footage. It wasn't anything new. It was a lot of footage that was shown during a Disney investor meeting. Okay. But there was some really good sound bites and interviews from Deborah Chow and Ewan McGregor. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm very excited about the Obi-Wan series. I can't think of something that I want more as a Star Wars fan than Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen on screen in any context. So that's for me the next big chapter in Star Wars. So I can't even articulate my excitement.
And let alone 6 hours worth. 6 1-hour episodes.
That'd be so good.
Yeah.
We have something to talk about again. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
I watched the episode 3 behind the scenes documentary, on the DVD for Revenge of the Sith, probably more than I watched the movie. And I don't know why. I just loved all the commentary from Hayden and Ewan, and I loved watching them train for all their battle on Mustafar. I feel like I know every frame of the training sequences of the episode 3 documentary. And I'm mad that it's not on Disney Plus. They have behind the scenes for some of the other movies, but they haven't added the one for ROTS.
Steven, I'm going to be honest with you. I just got goosebumps when you said that because I was the exact same way. And just seeing the passion of Ewan and Hayden in that duel while they were doing the choreography, I mean, they went above and beyond what anybody in the studio asked them to do with that scene. And I love the fact it's still the longest sword fight in movie history, which is pretty cool. But that passion leads over. Yep. Still
amazing.
The longest fight.
I do feel it. It's pretty darn long. That's cool.
And I'm so glad that people are finally giving Hayden the credit that he deserves. I think people are recognizing that a lot of the issues we saw were with more George, with his writing and directing, than they were with Hayden, and they can finally respect and appreciate him for the love and passion that he brought to the Star Wars saga.
He's getting his just desserts, and boy does he deserve it. He doesn't even look any different.
I know.
He looks like the same. Ewan McGregor also looks the same.
Yeah.
And he's so good to the fans as well.
Absolutely. So we've been having a lot of fun here with Stephen Kent, author and podcaster. Pickup. What else is happening tomorrow? Something big is happening tomorrow, right?
Not for me.
When does the book drop?
The book dropped on Tuesday, Rose.
Oh. You know what? I was listening to your Beltway Banthas and you said, "Oh, the book drops tomorrow." And I'm like, "But that was an old Beltway Bantha." I went back
on the wrong day.
I listened to it twice.
Yeah.
Bro, we're literally talking about the book here.
Ro is drunk.
With my psychic power. How many of those drinks you had, Ro?
No, you know what's big is that tomorrow I'm getting my copy. So that's what was big. Yeah,
good for you. I'm so excited. Someone was just tweeting me just a minute ago saying that they just got to chapter 3 and it gets better and better every chapter. And I'm just so excited because Star Wars fans who are giving this book a try, whether or not they've loved every single movie, whether or not, and I mean this, like whether or not they're like far left fans or really reactionary conservative fans or libertarians that I talk to, Star Wars fans who love Star Wars and don't accept that all of it's perfect, they're all messaging me and being like, holy cow, I've never seen someone take on Star Wars in this authentic of a way before that made me think about it like this. And I'm so excited and happy. I could gush over it. So I hope you guys enjoy it and your listeners will give it a spin because I think it's special. I think it's like the love letter to Star Wars that doesn't try to convince people of anything. It's just like telling you what Star Wars says on the screen that in your heart, but I think everybody on Twitter tells you you're wrong for thinking.
I'll tell you what, you said it a little bit ago, and it is. This is not me just kissing up to the guests, and because Ro and I have had this discussion, even my love for Star Wars in the recent years, especially, had grown kind of stale, mostly because of all the infighting that you discuss, and where it just made it not fun. We're trying to do a podcast where we're just trying to have fun here, and because of all this crap that's out there. With social media and all the negativity, it's been hard. And just reading that book, you're absolutely right. It has helped me to start loving Star Wars again for what it is. One part that I really liked, it reminded me of a book I read many years ago. There's a book, Star Wars and Philosophy, that came out a bunch of years ago, and and then you kind of revisit some of those ideas where. In that book, it talked about how the Jedi Order basically died on Coruscant because there was so much technology there that they had become detached from the Force, and you kind of revisit a lot of those thoughts where everybody's on their phones instead of just talking to each other. So I highly encourage folks to give the book a read or give the book a listen, whichever you prefer. It definitely will help to spark some of those feelings again and make you want to watch the movies again. So I appreciate that, and I thank you for that.
Brad, thank you.
Quick question, Stephen. Are you sneaking into bookstores and grabbing your book and then signing copies of it?
No sneaking involved. Yeah, no. My agent told me, she was like, yeah. Go to a store if you're ever near one. Walk up to the info desk and say, "Hi, my name is this. I have a book in stock here. Would you like me to sign the copies?" And they always are like, "Yes," because almost every bookstore has stickers that say like signed copies. So you go in and sign your copies, and then they put a sticker on it that say, "This is a signed copy." So
Very
yeah,
nice.
it's a lot of fun. I have been doing that, and it's been a fun way to kill time here and there. Just be like, oh, well, I'll go to this store and sign some copies.
Because you have so
Awesome.
much time to kill right now. I know.
On the road, at least, I've been like traveling from town to town, and I'll like put a Barnes and Nobles like on my map on the way in,
Yeah.
and just do that to add some value.
Absolutely. Very cool. Very cool. Where are you heading next?
I am going to Atlanta tomorrow. I'll be in Atlanta tomorrow night, and then Washington, D.C. release party for the book is next week. Very excited.
Very nice. Awesome. Awesome. Well, this has been fantastic. Stephen, thank you so much for coming back to the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast and just talking about how the Force can save the world. A really great book. Everybody in the chat, if you're picking it up afterwards, I know Red 5 Network has a couple of shows that have been going on at the same time as ours. But, pick up, like Brad said, pick up the physical copy or download the Audible version or do both. I've done both. I still love holding a book in my hand. It's, we can do a whole podcast on the difference between Audibles and physical books. But thank you so much. I find it fascinating that George Lucas has tapped into something with this franchise enough that we're still talking about it 40 plus years later. I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing. Testament to him as a world builder, as an author of Star Wars, a creator of Star Wars. And it's to some degree, it's all of our bread and butter when it comes to podcasting and content creation. Like Brad said at the beginning of the broadcast, it's, we're sitting around the coffee table or when we first started around the play yard, just talking about Star Wars.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been great as always.
Final message, Stephen, for the chat.
Always be willing to stand up to darkness, but not at the cost of setting foot into the darkness yourself. Thank you for open minds and open hearts as we talked through this kind of weighty subject tonight.
Very nice. Thank you so much. Brad, I hope you had fun tonight.
Absolutely. Always. He might just be a regular guest now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody in the chat, thank you so much. If you're catching this on the replay, thank you for finding us. Again, tell us what you think. Leave us a voicemail over at the Scarif Scuttlebutt hotline, 773-234-8659. Uh-oh, Brad's got an idea.
Yeah. You posted the link on Twitter, but the fact that Roe actually went through with this, I have to get mine as well. The taxation of trade routes is
that's
theft.
right.
Make sure you go to our TeePublic store and pick yourself up that. And if you want to know more about why it's theft, you can talk to Stephen. You can talk to myself. We'll let you know why the taxation of trade routes is theft. Get your shirt today. Go buy Stephen's book in all formats. Happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there. Thank you for your service. And that's the Scuttlebutt.
Take care, everybody.
May the Force be with you.